Now available in paperback and Kindle Unlimited. The Man Crisis. Learn why so many men are struggling to find their way in an increasingly gynocentric world in The Man Crisis. Get your copy of The Man Crisis in paperback and Kindle Unlimited today. There was outrage here in New York as 4 individuals who were arrested and charged in connection with the dismembering of 2 human bodies and scattering their remains all across Long Island were released on supervised release due to New York's bail reform laws.
Four people arrested in connection with those human remains found scattered across Long Island walked out of court free until their next court appearance. Also today, prosecutors released disturbing new details about what they found inside the home where 3 of those defendants lived. Eyewitness News reporter Sonia Rincon live at the courthouse in Central Islip. Sonia?
Sandra, all 4 of the suspects face the exact same 2 charges: tampering with evidence and concealing a human corpse, or as the prosecutor today put it more bluntly, hacking off limbs and scattering them. None of the suspects has been charged with killing the 2 victims. That means they are free to go until they're due back here or until they face more charges while investigators gather more evidence, which at this point is likely to be presented to a grand jury. The 4 suspects in the case of the scattered body parts hid their faces and dodged questions. 33-year-old Alexis Nieves, 40-year-old Amanda Wallace, 44-year-old Stephen Brown, and 38-year-old Jeffrey Mackey appeared in criminal court and walked out with monitoring bracelets. 3 of them live at the home on Railroad Avenue in Amityville police searched Monday night and Tuesday morning. A prosecutor described the evidence at that house, including cutting tools like a meat cleaver and traces of human remains, but did not say who killed or dismembered the 2 victims or why.
You hear them talk about blood in a house, but you don't hear about witnesses. So that's all I gathered from today's proceeding.
Lawyers for the suspects tell us they look forward to hearing from witnesses and seeing evidence.
We've entered a plea of not guilty. We have not received any discovery at this point. We maintain our innocence.
The suspects are free to go for now, but the 3 who live in Amityville can't go home. The apartment is considered uninhabitable because the plumbing there was taken apart, some of it removed because it contained evidence like blood. Still, all 4 have been ordered not to leave Suffolk County.
She has a pretrial supervised release, which is monitored by the probation department, and there'll be a GPS monitor.
Neither Suffolk County Police nor the DA are ready to speak about the case as the investigation continues into the deaths of the 59-year-old woman and 53-year-old man. Their dismembered body parts found in Southard's Pond Park, Bethpage State Park, and a wooded strip on a residential street in West Babylon between last Thursday and yesterday. The names of the victims still haven't been released, and their relationship to the suspects is still a mystery. Yeah, those relationships between the suspects and the victims could be at the heart of all of this and could help explain why someone would go to such great lengths to leave the body parts in pieces across several miles of Suffolk County the way they were left. Again, for now, the suspects are on supervised release. They are due in court again in the next 2 weeks, but they could be back sooner if more evidence leads to more charges.
Now, according to reports, 44-year-old Stephen Brown, 38-year-old Jeffrey Mackey, 40-year-old Amanda Wallace, and 33-year-old Alexis Nieves were arrested in participating in a gruesome scheme where they allegedly dismembered the bodies of a 53-year-old man and a 58-year-old woman who were a part of their social circle. Now, according to some reports, they say that this group basically allegedly murdered both of these individuals, and after murdering these individuals, they allegedly dismembered their bodies, leaving so much blood that the home that they participated in dismembering these bodies was virtually uninhabitable at that point. And after dismembering these bodies, they began putting body parts all over Long Island, where the first of them were found by children going to school, And after seeing that arm, this is where Suffolk County Police began doing their own investigation, where they continued to find body parts all across Long Island. And after finding those body parts all across Long Island, they did an investigation where they found that home that was filled with blood and arrested all 4 of these individuals in connection with the dismembering of those bodies. And after arresting them in connection with the dismembering of those bodies, sadly, due to New York's dysfunctional bail reform law, all 4 of these individuals were released on supervised release, outraging many New Yorkers. Now, the Suffolk County Police and the Suffolk County District Attorney see this as an isolated incident, but when I take a critical examination of this horrific act of violence, it definitely fits the pattern and profile for beta males that I talk about in my book, The Man Crisis, and the behavior pattern of dysfunctional women that I talk about in my book, The Woman Crisis. And the actions by this pair of couples fits the chapters I talk about as related to the sexual deviancy of the beta male in The Man Crisis, and the chapter where I talk about murder and the woman crisis. And in both of those chapters, I talk about how individuals can participate in depraved behavior like this. And the main reason why people would be motivated to participate in depraved behavior like this is because when it comes to beta males basically live in a place I call a rose-colored reality, in a place I call the secret world. And when it comes to these 2 couples, they definitely look like individuals who are living in the secret world, because according to some reports, some are saying that the possible motive for this alleged possible murder and dismemberment of these 2 older people had to do with some sort of love triangle. That is what is being speculated in some reports. And according to those reports, they are saying that because of this love triangle, this is what was the motivation for the alleged murder of these 2 individuals and the plan to dismember their bodies and scatter their body parts all across Long Island. And the behaviors here basically fit patterns that I talk about in The Man Crisis as related to the sexual deviancy of the beta male, because oftentimes when beta males feel like they are not able to get the relationships that they want, or things aren't working out in their social circles, they will believe that they have a justification to do harm to people. And because they live in a rose-colored reality when it comes to these males, they don't see people as people. No, they see people as objects. And because they see people as objects and are really detached from people, they have no problem taking the life of someone that they would consider a friend. The same thing for a dysfunctional woman, like I talk about in the chapter Murder and the Woman Crisis. Many of these women are coming from, again, deeply dysfunctional and traumatized homes, and because they come from these deeply dysfunctional homes, they are, again, detached just like the beta male and believe they have every right to take the life of someone as related to such a slight as somebody having an affair in a social circle. Now, this is very antisocial and very depraved behavior, and is not the kind of healthy behavior people have in social circles. Now, there are longtime friends who have had extramarital affairs or affairs with other people, and what they do in those situations is they just cut off ties to that individual socially and don't have much to do with that person after that. That's what they do. They just leave the person alone and move on with their life. Unfortunately, when you have a beta male or a troubled, dysfunctional woman, what they do is they believe that because they've had relationships in the secret world and they're detached from people in a rose-colored reality, they look to get revenge. And as they look to get revenge, it's all about them having their power and taking power away from people by taking their lives. They believe that if they take this person's life, they will get power over them and get even with that person. And it's all about that rush of power they have and seeing that person's life leave their body. That's what it means to the beta male and the deeply dysfunctional woman. It's all about them having that power, and that's why they would go out here and take 2 lives. And I believe, this is my own opinion, these people were murdered, because for these 2 bodies to be there, they couldn't just have died on their own of natural causes. No, there would have to be some malice of forethought, and that will be shown in the coroner's report when they do toxicology and also do reports as related to whatever goes on with those bodies, because 2 people who are 58 and 53 just don't die all of a sudden and just die there, because if that was the case, they would have just called 911. But they did this because I believe there was some malice of forethought, and did this allegedly of malice of forethought, and then in order to go out here and show how much more power they had over these individuals, this is where they decided to dismember both of these human bodies. One, to humiliate the people who, for betraying them as related to the alleged affair as speculated by some reports, and 2, to show their power as related to the whole situation, as related to them looking to be the dominance in the social circle. That's basically why they dismembered these bodies and then scattered these body parts. It was all about sending a message to people regarding their depraved behavior. It was all about sending a message regarding their deeply disturbing and depraved behavior. And what's even more disturbing than the alleged depraved behavior of these 4 people is the response by New York's criminal justice system. Now, the district attorney, I believe, was looking to try to possibly give them some sort of pass as related to white privilege, because I definitely believe murder charges should have been filed immediately, because this is definitely looking like a first-degree murder. But the district attorney here looks like what he wanted to do was talk about the dismembering and disposal of human remains in that Amityville home in Suffolk County, and use that to be the start of the case. And using that as the start of the case basically made it where we saw the just complete dysfunction of New York's bail reform law, because according to New York's bail reform law, a person who dismembers a human body and participates in behavior that shows complete depraved indifference to human life, that person is not locked up in a jail before they go to trial. No, these people are given supervised release with these ankle bracelets, and that should have everyone outraged, because we have here someone possibly participating in behavior on the level of a serial killer, and somebody participating in behavior on the level of depravity and indifference to human life of a serial killer. That's somebody who should be locked up in a jail where they can be supervised, but because of New York's dysfunctional bail reform laws that are on the books, this individual is out on a supervised release. And what that does is send a very disturbing message to all of those other individuals who participate in these kinds of crimes, like the individual who participated in a series of attacks on women in Arizona, and is a good reason why most people don't want to extradite people like that killer to New York, because what Alvin Bragg here in New York would do is possibly release that individual, even though he's participated in a first-degree murder and participated in assaults on women, and leave them out to go out here and prey on other people. Here we have a case just like the one in New York City, where we have 4 individuals participating in extremely depraved behavior straight out of a horror movie. Depraved behavior like what I would write in a horror novel like Eternal Night, where vampires are attacking people, and we have a prosecutor saying, oh, their hands are tied by this dysfunctional bail reform law, a law that is basically not only incentivizing people in New York City to escalate their crimes from misdemeanors to felonies, but also escalating the depraved behavior of people like those who want to participate in serial crimes like serial killing. I mean, this whole bail reform law basically incentivizes those individuals to believe that their crimes that they participate with malice aforethought and depraved indifference, that all they'll get is a supervised release, and that again incentivizes criminals to believe that they are possibly going to be able to not get any sort of punishment for their crime. And I also can see how this law is being applied in an absolutely racist fashion, because we had a black individual who was saying that he was an advocate for criminals, ex-offenders, and he murdered someone, and after murdering someone here in New York City, he was held without bail. But all of these 4 white and non-black individuals who participated in a possible murder and dismembering of a body, they are on work release, not on work release, but on release, supervised release. And that shows how white privilege is used in this situation as related to some possible extremely heinous crime. And it shows why people are outraged about New York's dysfunctional bail reform law, one of the worst laws ever created since the law of amending prohibition, a law that basically opens the door and incentivizes criminals to believe that they can escalate their criminal behavior, because many of the laws that as related to bail reform basically tie the hands of judges and prevent those judges from being able to assign cash bail to very dangerous individuals who could possibly be a flight risk, because these bracelets that are put on people's ankles, really what these people can do is just cut them off and then go on their way. And that basically puts many of those people on Long Island and the United States in fear, because this individual basically has a carte blanche to participate in more heinous criminal behavior, because if you'll dismember a body, you are on the road to being a serial killer, because only a person who has a complete depraved indifference to human life would participate in this kind of crime. And this is not the kind of person you would put on a supervised release. And it just shows how completely backwards New York State's bail reform law is, because this bail reform law was created by a group of ideologues like Andrew Cuomo, Bill de Blasio, Carl Heastie, and Andrea Stewart Cousins, who allegedly wanted to help out black and brown people as related to alleged disproportionate being locked up in Rikers Island and local jails. But this law hasn't really helped anything at all. No, all it's done is increase crime. And this case basically has outraged a lot of people, because those people are now looking at Governor Kathy Hochul and the imbeciles like Carl Heastie and Andrea Stewart Cousins, who want to stand behind this failed bail reform law, a bail reform law that basically rewards criminals to participate and incentivizes them to participate in more crimes. And once people start to see that they can get away with participating in gruesome crimes like this and not be held accountable at all by the criminal justice system, this opens the door for anarchy. And this is the type of behavior that, again, shows how there is a complete lack of leadership in the criminal justice system. And that's another aspect of beta males and toxic females, in that they don't know how to lead or problem solve, because this law basically has opened the door for men in crisis and women in crisis to believe that they can go out here and continue to participate in more crimes. And this whole incident, again, is quite disturbing, because if you have a person dismembering a body, that's definitely should be a felony connected with a possible murder. But here in New York, a person who participates in a possible murder now has a technical get-out-of-jail-free card, and that's why they are out here on the street. And that just shows how much worse the man crisis is getting, because we have people in politics who really don't want to acknowledge the man crisis and the woman crisis going on in this country, and they don't want to acknowledge how much worse they're making the man crisis and the woman crisis, because this interpretation of law, now that it is public, is going to possibly motivate more of these kinds of criminals, especially if they are white or non-black, to believe that they have a get-out-of-jail-free card, and that, again, is going to add to more chaos in the streets of the state of New York, and another reason why we need to repeal these bail reform laws, because these bail reform laws tie the hands of judges, tie the hands of DAs. Now, Kathy Hochul wants to say that the DA should have prepared a better case, and I will agree to that to some point, but they needed to charge these people with something until they could get the evidence for the murder case together, and they couldn't hold them but so long because of these policies like bail reform. And sadly, this all has to do with the people in the legislature not understanding that, yeah, you want to help out Pookie and Ray Ray and Sancho, but the whole thing is there's a proper process to this, and the proper process as related to things was never addressed as related to the situation with Kalief Browder. No, we never really addressed it, because the real issue with Kalief Browder was that his case was not tried on 180 days as related to due process under the law of the Constitution, as related to a person's right to a speedy trial, and that was all due to the incompetence of the Bronx DA's office, which did not go out here and deal with Kalief Browder's case constructively. And now, because Kalief Browder's case wasn't dealt with constructively, we're still having problems, and those problems are going all across the state, because the DA's office really isn't able to do their job, because they get their hands tied due to this dysfunctional bail reform law. Because had we got cash bail set as related to these heinous charges of $1 million or more until things got taken care of, these people would be sitting in jail and not a possible clear and present danger. And again, just shows how bad this law has been ever since it was enacted in 2019. And ever since it was enacted in 2019, it has put New York State in crisis, because all it does is incentivize people to continue an increase in frequency of violent crimes. And those violent crimes are making the man crisis and the woman crisis here in this country just that much worse, because we don't have any sort of government action to hold people who participate in these kind of crimes accountable. So this whole situation should trouble everyone, because it shows us how bad bail reform laws are. And bail reform laws with white privilege basically put all communities in danger, because, again, we see a clear double standard. Here's a group of white and non-black people who participated in a series of heinous crimes, and they've got ankle monitoring bracelets. Meanwhile, a black man who participated in the same crime, and I'm going to get to him in another video, because he's definitely a man in crisis. He's in jail with no bail from some fluke due to Alvin Bragg possibly seeing the bad publicity of this case and the optics, and seeing the optics of being embarrassed by Arizona's prosecutor, which didn't want to bring that possible guy who was on a road to becoming a serial killer back to New York. I mean, we have a situation here where we have incompetent beta male leadership and toxic feminist indoctrinated leadership, basically putting people's health, safety, and freedom in jeopardy. And we really need to start thinking critically about who we elect, because who we elect can be someone who can help solve the man crisis or make it worse, which is what we've got with the politicians here in New York. Now, if you want to learn more about what leads to people participating in deviant and depraved behavior and what motivates them to participate in deviant and depraved behaviors, you can pick up my books, The Man Crisis and The Woman Crisis, to learn the roots of why people are participating in more frequent violent incidents like this and participating in much of these depraved and antisocial behaviors. You can find all about why all of this is concurrently happening in more frequent periods by picking up my books, The Man Crisis and The Woman Crisis, on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. And you can also find The Man Crisis and The Woman Crisis at other online booksellers like Draft to Digital, Google Play, Barnes & Noble, Walmart, Target, and all digital booksellers out there. And if you want to see me make more videos talking and detailing why we have this man crisis, you can send and woman crisis, you can send a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback. From the author of the critically acclaimed book, The Man Crisis, comes The Woman Crisis. Learn why so many women have become lost in their quest to have it all in The Woman Crisis. Get your copy of The Woman Crisis in paperback at Amazon.com and online booksellers today. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.